Hi everyone. I'm Pam Challey. I am a professor and dean emeritus at the University of North Florida, and I want to welcome you tonight to our Leading Ladies Speaker Series. This is the second session of our series. It's a free online webinar that is really celebrating successful and inspiring and also very innovative women leaders from our community. All of you attendees, we hope that you will use the opportunity to ask Stephanie questions because she is ready and willing and able, certainly, to answer these questions. But how about using the Q&A box to make that happen during the presentation? And she will answer as many questions as possible at the end. When we get to about 6:45 or so, I'll probably wrap up. But with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. So our speaker this evening is Stephanie Vasquez. Stephanie is currently the Public Health Information Officer for the city of Zephyrhills. And she's the former vice president of the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking. In addition, Stephanie serves as president of the board for the NISSI Project, which is a project that is a nonprofit that provides safe houses for individuals that are being trafficked. She's the vice chair of the Pasco County Commission on Human Trafficking, and she is also an advisory board member for the Veterans Nonprofit Community Organization. She served in the United States Air Force, and she earned her bachelor's degree in behavioral science. She has a master's degree in entrepreneurship in applied technologies from the University of South Florida. And she's here today to share her talk, "We Are Not Protected from What We Are Perfected Through." It's a conversation about becoming a leader. So with that in mind, it is my honor to turn it over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I appreciate that. And that is one heck of an introduction. And while everything in my bio is true, I always get a little uncomfortable when it's read for things like this. A bio to me can be misleading. In its essence, it's meant to highlight achievements, add credibility, give the audience a reason to listen to what the speaker has to say, right? But by its nature, it only highlights the ups, the good stuff. A good bio calls attention to one's highest achievements, but it doesn't give any inclination as to the path taken to get there and the valleys along the way. As a woman in leadership, I'm here to tell you that there will be ups. There will be opportunities to shine and do your thing and stand behind a podium or speak to a group of change makers like yourselves, but there will be far more valleys. So let's go back in time just a bit to tell you a little about my path here to this bio that was read so well. I'm going to screen share just for a moment. Oops, I just lost my thing. And then I'll stop screen sharing. So I'm going to screen share this one. Okay, can y'all see that house there? Pamela, can you see that house? Okay. So I was born in Flint, Michigan, and this is one of the houses that I lived in as a child. And here is another one. I grew up in these houses until about middle school, with my three sisters, my mom and dad, a dog, and a few cats at any given time. So just for reference, I wanted to share that, and now I'll stop screen sharing. Here we go. Over here. Okay, so am I back on the screen here? Okay. So as you can see, not a fancy upbringing. And I grew up with the understanding that we were poor. Almost any request that I had was met with a prompt, "No, because we're poor," explanation, which embedded itself into my identity. We were poor, I was poor, and poor people don't become rich, and poor people stay poor. And poor people are dirty, are uneducated, are destined for a life of difficulty and unhappiness. those were the messages that I received as a child in this environment. And I don't blame my parents. It wasn't just messaging from them. It came from all corners. It came from the way people in stores looked at my family. It came from comments from a well-intentioned older gentleman that because my toes have a slight curl, it must be because my shoes were always too small. It came from friends at school who were fascinated at how stiff my hair was because it hadn't been washed that frequently. My parents did the best they could. And in fact, the houses you saw are a huge step up from the environment they were brought up in, which was very poor. So they did a great job, but there was no escaping the constant rotation of messaging that I was poor and that because of that, somehow I mattered less than people who had more. So as I grew into my teenage years, I became determined not to repeat this cycle that had been repeated onto me. I was determined to make something of myself and to never, ever find myself in a situation in which I couldn't pay my bills or in which I had to ask for help. And I'm grateful to my parents because they believed in me and they believed that I could do anything and they told me so and encouraged me to reach for the sky. So I worked hard in school and I got good grades and I started babysitting at age 14. And by the time I was 16, right after I turned 16, I got my first job because of course I had to pay for anything, that I wanted or needed. So I was working hard and I was working hard at school to get good grades. And so I ended up graduating a semester early and heading straight to college on a scholarship. I was like, yeah, I'm doing it, right? I'm breaking that cycle. I'm on my way. That's how I felt. And so a couple of years into college, I decided I really wanted to travel and be part of something bigger. And so I called up an Air Force recruiter and basically just said, hey, I want to join the Air Force. And he was like, well, that was easy. And so off I went, and my years in the Air Force were incredible. I fell in love. I got married, had a steady paycheck with benefits, which was awesome. I got to live in Germany and travel through Europe during that time. And when we started trying for our first child, I got pregnant right away. And together we were making good money. So it felt like we're doing this, I got there. I made it where I needed to go. But as life does, things began unraveling at that point. My son, my firstborn, was diagnosed with a condition called gastroschisis. So that's where his intestines were going outside of his body. And so I decided after that to get out of the military and stay home with my baby who would need extended care. It was an easy decision. Of course, I was going to take care of my baby. And at the time I was married to somebody who was in the military. So while our income was going to be cut in half, it was still doable and we could make that work. So over the next couple of years, our son Dominic slowly healed and became a normal, rambunctious toddler. And he's actually turning 12 next Wednesday. So he's doing awesome. But so things progressed, and got better. And we ended up getting pregnant with our second child, our daughter Scarlett. Times were tight financially, but doable. And a few years after Scarlett was born, my third child, Roman, entered the world. And during this time of having babies and pinching pennies, I even got my bachelor's degree, but our marriage went from so-so to impossible to sustain. And try as we might, we couldn't make that work. So here I have all of this determination to raise my children in an environment in which they're well taken care of, in a happy home with two parents, with the ability to put them in sports and good schools. And I found myself as the single mother to 3 kids under the age of 5. The events leading up to that path my life had taken were irrelevant at that point. I could sit around and cry and ruminate about where I had gone wrong, where my ex went wrong. Of course, that's easy to do, right? Blah, blah, blah. But why? What was that going to do? So you do what you have to do. And I did the best I could. So having been out of the workforce, though, for a few years raising babies, I had the degree, but no real experience outside of the military. And so what I found was I couldn't find a job that would pay me enough money to cover the daycare costs for 3 kids in full-time care. 3 kids in full-time care is thousands of dollars a month in daycare costs. So I couldn't get a job that would pay me enough to make that work. I applied everywhere, and many didn't even call me for interviews because I didn't have the experience at the time. And the ones who did just wouldn't offer enough money. You know, I couldn't make that work. So I had to live off of child support, which was not enough to pay bills. And so I remember applying for the EBT card, which is like a debit card for food stamps. And when I got the email notification that I had funding for food, I just broke down and started crying because it was such a stress. I can't tell you how many times I had to make phone calls to credit card companies or the electric company or the place I paid my rent to, asking for an extension, you know, not a handout, but just asking for, can I get a little more time or things like that. And humbling is a word I can use now to describe that time, but in that moment, it felt humiliating. I couldn't believe that this is where my life had taken me after all of that determination and what I had grown up in. And, you know, I felt like I took the right steps. You know, I did it at the military, I got a degree, I got married, and it just kind of all fell apart. And I found myself in this, what felt like an impossible situation. So here I was, you know, asking the utility company to please don't turn the power off again. But, you know, the kids didn't know any better, thankfully, and I tried my best to hide all of this from them. But when the power was turned off, they'd run through the house, flipping the light switches on and off, and they were just fascinated by how all of the electricity was broken. And so, you know, that was, I just had to kind of grin and bear it and let them do their thing until the electricity was fixed again. But, you know, that would be their memory of it, fortunately. But it was very stressful for me. And then there were many times I'd take the kids to Walmart because we could get snacks with the EBT card, and I'd let them play in the toy aisle for 20 or 30 minutes because I felt bad that I couldn't buy them toys to have at the house. So they play in the toy aisle. So one day I was bringing them home from the store from doing that. And I remember we were walking up the sidewalk toward our apartment door, and there was something hanging on our door, and it looked like a flyer. So I'm looking at it as I'm walking. I'm carrying little baby Roman, and I've got my hand holding the other one of the other ones. And I see this bright green paper on the door. And as I walked closer, I could just feel the temperature of my body rising. Like the heat was just climbing up through my gut, and my chest was tightening. I'm like flushing my neck into my face because I knew what was coming. It was only a matter of time. And I was getting evicted, and we did get evicted. And it just hits you like a ton of bricks that you failed. And all of those things that I had wanted to avoid just came rushing at me. And that, because we don't have all the time in the world, is where I'll kind of stop that story. But just know that things got better eventually. It was a tough slog and road, and we'll get into some of the life lessons that I learned. But you know, today I have a beautiful home, and I'm remarried, and you know, have this beautiful office that I'm sitting in and things like that. But I've chosen to spend my time on here really focusing on that period in my life because, number one, it was my rock bottom. And number two, it was the most formative, impactful time in my life. And it showed me what I'm made of. And that dark, lonely time created the opportunity for so much growth. And I consumed self-help books and dove headfirst into meditating and learning about spirituality and going back to school for a graduate degree, and just focused intensely on bettering myself on the inside. And I knew that unless I changed the programming in my brain about, for me specifically, poverty and what my life was capable of, I knew that if I didn't change that, then I would keep experiencing the things that I so desperately wanted to avoid. So I learned a lot of lessons during that period that have gotten me through many, many other failures and challenges. And I want to share that with you because life is not a straight line. It weaves forward and back, and it ebbs and flows and has hills and valleys. And I think it's really important that as future leaders, you not only expect challenges, but you're equipped to overcome them. And because it's easy, and I also wanted to tell this story because it's really easy to think that a successful person with an impressive bio has somehow bypassed the tough stuff. And I want to just make it really clear that that's often the opposite of the case. So possibly one of the most impactful things, possibly the most impactful thing that I really want to articulate today that I learned from that time in my life is how important it is to break past barriers within myself that were holding me back from reaching my potential. And so if you can apply the example that I've given, the real example that I've given from my life to situations in your life, whether you've experienced it already or will in the future, because it will come. If it hasn't already, you're going to go through some stuff. I just encourage you to look for the way that you can break past the barrier in yourself so that you can get to that full potential that you have. One of my favorite quotes is from J.K. Rowling, and it is that rock bottom became the solid foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. And so now that we've kind of gotten through that history and story and set the tone for all of the lessons that I've learned, I want to share some of those lessons that I've learned. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and leadership talks and read a lot of books. Like I said, I was like a self-help junkie for a while there. And so some of this, if you're into that stuff, you may have heard before, but I try to come from a unique perspective and not give the canned leadership advice. So that's what I've got here today. And so I believe that each and every person has the ability to reach their fullest potentials, just so long as you don't let life scare you off your path. When things happen and it's rolling downhill, like keep your head on straight. And so I put together a list of 10 qualities or things that I've noticed about really impactful leaders, things that I've learned from my own experiences, and things that I continue to strive toward. So number one is to be a leader, you have to be willing to be transparent. Leaders inspire others to follow. They don't force others to follow. So don't hide behind a fake persona or try to be someone you're not. Just be authentically you in whatever that is, in whatever phase of your life that is, because transparency and authenticity is what people are drawn to. So if you want to be a leader, you feel like you are, be exactly who you are. And be open with the fact that you're going to make mistakes and you're not, my light, that you're going to make mistakes and not be perfect. And that's, I believe, true leadership is owning that part of you. Number two, feed your mind and spirit. Put so much good for you content in here that all of the junk we're exposed to all day, every day doesn't stand a chance. Books, podcasts, TED Talks, articles. Find people who you aspire to be like and seek to understand what makes them successful. This one's really key. Number three, your integrity should never be for sale. This is a tough one, even though it sounds pretty straightforward. But what I have found in the professional life is that you will have opportunities over and over and over again to compromise your integrity for a sale, for a promotion, for a profit, to put someone else down so you look better, a little white lie to cover up a mistake you made. But probably every single day you will have the chance to compromise your integrity. But don't ever take it. Great leaders, I believe, have impeccable integrity, period. Good leaders, maybe not, but great leaders, which is what I feel you all are striving toward, have impeccable integrity. And you don't just wake up one day like that. You don't just cheat your way and, halfway do things. all through grade school, college, and adulthood, and then just wake up and you have all of this integrity and character that you've built. It's a muscle that has to be exercised and tested and used and grown. So every time you get a chance to make a small decision that keeps your integrity intact, do it. Make that decision. Because as a leader, the stakes get higher. Be in the habit of making decisions that are based on a high level of integrity and an honesty, because there's nothing that kills a reputation faster than someone who can't be trusted. And I've put a lot into this one because I do feel it's one of the most important qualities of great leadership, but also because it's so easy for people to slip. And it's, you know, I'm not perfect by any means, but I've walked away from jobs and promotions because I wasn't willing to compromise my integrity. And it's not always an easy decision. It's often not an easy decision. You know, when you're walking away from a steady paycheck and all the opportunity in the world and a big fat title because you don't believe in what the organization is aligned with or what leadership is doing, that's a tough call, but my integrity is intact. And I feel like it will make me an even stronger leader because of that. So number 4, qualities of a great leader is, or a way to become one is to volunteer. So everyone says, find your passion, but I know as well as anybody else that that's a lot of pressure for somebody who wants to make an impact in the world, but hasn't sorted out all the details. Like, find my passion. How do I find my passion? You know, it feels like a lot of pressure to do that. So I say, volunteer for anything that piques your interest. Raise your hand, sign up to help people. I will tell you, I am only successful in my career because I have volunteered to do grunt work over and over and over again. The only way I got involved with anti-trafficking efforts, and now I get to do these incredible things and work with these incredible people, but it started as me just saying, I'll help. I don't know, I don't have any money to give you, you know, but I'll help with whatever you need me to help with. And just through the years, I became integrated in that community and became, you know, an expert in that community, and then got hired on at an organization. And so it kind of snowballs from there. So I can't say enough about volunteering. The same with working with veterans organizations and things like that. So volunteer. It's never a waste of time, because not only does it help others, but it grows your network. It opens you up to opportunities to develop and demonstrate your leadership capabilities, and it could ignite that passion. It could show you, you know, what that passion is that you have that you want to go toward for the rest of your career. And another note is, when you are a big shot leader and you have people reporting to you and you feel like you don't have any time to contribute to other things, try to remember this: volunteer. Put yourself in situations in which you are volunteering and reporting to people. It'll keep you humble, and it'll hone your own leadership and skills by answering to somebody else and in watching somebody else's leadership style from the role of a follower instead of a leader. Some of the best leaders that I've worked with and for have that mentality, where they're a leader. I mean, they're the boss. They're commanding hundreds of people and movements in the country and things like that. But they put themselves in situations where they are not the boss, so that specifically they can understand, again, like, remember what it feels like to not be the leader, and to gain more experience from others. So I think that's key. So number 5, as a leader, you have to be willing to go first, to chart the course, to step up when the path is unclear, and when the end result is just as likely epic failure as massive success, and you don't know which way this is going to go, because that's what a leader is. Someone who's willing to go first, to make the hard decisions, and to take accountability for the team. So as young leaders, got to get comfortable with that, with stepping out, going first, putting your name out there, and being wrong sometimes, but being willing to do it. Number 6 is, and this is kind of like to the title of the talk, look at challenges as opportunities for growth. So the title of the talk is, we are not protected from what we are perfected through. I heard that a long time ago, back when my baby Dominic was, you know, still struggling with health problems and my marriage was not good. And so I heard somebody say that and it just hit me. And I thought that so well states what I had thought about life, is that we go through these challenges to become the perfected version of ourselves. And you never get there. You know, you're never going to be perfect, because what's the point of living and dealing with all these challenges if, you know, you're perfect already? So it's this evolution in this process. But if you look at it as opportunities for growth, then it changes the perspective that you have on life. So instead of saying something like, I'm having an awful day, you change the narrative to, I'm having a character building day. And that might be a little cheesy, but if you do that in your head, it really changes your perspective. And it constantly monitor your perspective and keep leaning it toward this positive way of thinking until doing that is second nature. Because the people that I've seen that are happy, you can be a leader and be miserable, you can be successful and be miserable. The people that I've seen who are leaders and successful and happy and fulfilled, that's the perspective they have on life. That everything happens, that I can take a lesson from this and then apply it to this next phase in my life to help me be better. That is the perspective of happy, fulfilled leaders that I have found. So number 7, quality of a good leader is to build others up. I do something called, and I'll share it with you, I call it Friendly Fridays. And it's where I set at every Friday, I try to make a point to send at least one note to somebody, whether it's an email or a text message or, you know, in person. And basically I just give them a specific acknowledgement of what I appreciate about them. And so maybe it's somebody that I work with and I send them an email and I'm like, hey, I really appreciate you working with me on this project. You have the most creative ideas, or whatever it is. It's very authentic, you know, it's not made up, it's very authentic, but specifically acknowledging a thing that you appreciate about them. And so I try to do that on Fridays because I want to be somebody who builds others up. And I have found that great leaders do the similar things. So number 8 then kind of goes along with that, is surround yourself with people who are high achievers. Do not, please do not be threatened by other smart, attractive, capable people. Bring them into your tribe. Bring them in. You will accomplish far more together than separately. And to have a tribe of people who are capable and motivated and rooting for you, I don't even know how to describe it. I think of all of the incredible women that I work alongside in different capacities, and we have that where we just root for each other, and there's all good feelings and support, and you need that. If you're going to the top, girls, you need people holding you up sometimes, and you got to hold other people up sometimes, because there is enough opportunity. It does not have to be a competition. There's room for everybody. You fit, I promise. So surround yourself with good people and high achievers. It will make you want to do more. So number 9 is failure is a part of life. I feel like I demonstrated that with my example in the beginning, but I really wanted to make a point that failure is a part of life. I've failed more times than I can count. The example in the beginning was one of many, many times that I have felt like a failure, or that I have fallen flat on my face. And so will you. But please, if you take anything from this today, know that failure is temporary. If you choose, though, to glean these precious little nuggets of wisdom from it, those lessons are permanent and priceless. The failure becomes a lesson. So what you feel in the moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I really screwed that up, or I really messed this thing up, or I, didn't hit the mark here. It feels in the moment like a total disaster. But just please remember, that's temporary. But what you take from it can be permanent and priceless to your future. There's a quote about Michael Jordan that says, this is a quote from Michael Jordan. He says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And I truly believe in that. then there's countless accounts of other super successful people who have failed over and over again before reaching success, and then likely failed again, after reaching what we would call success. So check out Bill Gates, Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, and probably any other successful person that you can think of in your mind and that you admire. So the point of me bringing that up and really harping on that is get comfortable with failure. Not comfortable like you embrace it and you're fine with it, but comfortable in that you are willing to take the risk knowing that you may fail, because it's not the end of the world, and it's the only way to create real change is by trying things that have not been tried before and going out on a limb and putting yourself out there and being willing to take that risk. Sometimes it works and that's amazing, and sometimes it doesn't work and we learn and we try again. So the last piece of advice I have for this is number 10. I would suggest create a life motto, and it may change over time. So, but create a motto or a phrase that resonates with what you want your legacy to be. And I know you're young, but you can have a motto for the next 3 years. Every year around Christmas time, I create a vision board and I select a word of the year for this next year. So for my 2021, my word is soar. So I went to soar, and I went skydiving in January, which I never want to do again, but it was good. And I soared and it fit with the word. So we're good. But anyway, so create a life motto. So my motto that I'll give you mine, that in everything I do, large or small, I want to create positive, lasting impact. That's what I want to be known for, I guess, or leave, is just to create positive, lasting impact in all that I do. And so I hope that I've done that here today. Thank you all for letting me be part of this and for letting me speak to you. I'm honored to be able to speak to you, and I can't wait to cheer on your successes. So feel free to find me on Facebook so that I can watch you shine and clap from the sidelines. And with that, I will let you open it up to questions.
Okay. I have a question. And first of all, I just want to thank you. Those 10 lessons, I mean, I've been around a lot longer than you, and I am just, they are so important and so vital. And you were so authentic when you told us about them. So, wow, thank you. Thank you. Would you talk a little bit about the work you're doing with human trafficking?
Yeah.
That is just so heartbreaking, and when people are in that situation and are struggling to get out. So I'd really like to know a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you. I got involved with anti-human trafficking work when I was finishing up my graduate degree at USF in entrepreneurship. And I took a class called social entrepreneurship, where basically you had to pick a social cause and then try to build a business around it. And so my team picked human trafficking, and I knew about as much about it as most everybody else knew at the time, which was, oh, this must be a third world country thing that happens overseas. And, I had all of these misconceptions. So as we went through the project and I started learning more and talking to law enforcement and survivors, I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening. Specifically, I focused on sex trafficking, anti-sex trafficking. So what I understood is it's happening everywhere in the world, and the United States is a huge player in that game. The human trafficking industry globally is $150 billion a year industry, and the United States is one of the largest consumers of trafficked victims worldwide. And so what I mean by consumer is, for labor traffic victims, we are consuming the goods and services that they are trafficked for. And for sex trafficking victims, United States citizens are buying more sex than any other country in the world. So when I started learning these things, I just thought, what can I do? Back to the volunteering, I thought, I'm nobody. I have no money to give, but I can write. I had a magazine, so I said, I'll write some stories, and So I just started getting involved with it at that time. And so I've been really fortunate with when I was working with the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking, I helped to develop a program called the Trafficking Free Zone Program, which really focuses on reducing demand. So kind of the premise behind that is you can open up safe homes all day, every day. And by the way, there's not enough beds in the country for trafficking victims, not by far. So you can open up safe homes all day, every day, but that doesn't solve the problem that people are being trafficked, right? And you can put traffickers in jail every day, but that doesn't solve the problem that people are being trafficked. So I wanted to know, what is the root cause? And the root cause is that there's demand. There are people willing to pay to have sex with trafficked victims, which fuels the demand. And so as long as you have that, which fuels the trafficking. So as long as you have that demand, you're going to have trafficking. And so we developed this program to really go engage with communities at the local level. So the mayor, city council, people who could write ordinances and laws for within that community and implement training. And so that's what I did. And I was able to travel around the country and speak to mayors and city leaders around the country to implement that program. And so now I'm not at that organization anymore, but I'm with the Nisi Project and doing some other things on trafficking. So I just encourage everybody to learn about it, understand that it happens here, that it's a big problem here in Florida and the United States. And just, if you're called to do something about it, then just raise your hand because we could use the help.
Yeah, it shocks me how big of a problem it is, really. All right, so this is a question. This is from someone who's been on the web call, and it says, you spoke about integrity and the importance of walking away from the moments that ask you to compromise your integrity. How do you prepare for those moments in life? Are there good books or practices that you might suggest? Because sometimes in the moment, when a challenging situation occurs, it's difficult. So how do you prepare?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thank you for that. It's a great question because it is so complicated. It never feels black and white, right? It feels gray all the time. It feels like, oh, should I do this? I'm not sure. Am I, there's all these different angles you could take. But at the end of the day, what I rely on is, am I going to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I did what I felt was best? And you don't always have all the information. So you have to go with your gut or your intuition, whoever you trust for guidance, what you think is best. And my advice for preparing is everyday little decisions. So I could make a little decision. I mean, if I'm in college, I'm going to try to relate to you, to cheat on a test. And nobody's going to catch me. I'm at home, nobody's going to know, but I know that I'm not going to get the material as well as I would if I had studied for it. So I make that little decision because it's going to save me some time. Well, now I've compromised the integrity, And so I think it's just making those tiny decisions or telling the truth when you have the chance to tell a little white lie. Like, how easy is it to tell a little white lie to, I don't know, get out of something, or for whatever reason you have the opportunity every day to just say something that isn't entirely true. So what I try to do is not do that. I try to just take those little moments and build this muscle of integrity and choose, you know what, dang it, I really don't want to have this conversation right now. I really would rather tell this little lie, but I'm going to tell the truth and be transparent and direct and, build that muscle. And you know what I found is people really react well to that. It's very refreshing when someone is just honest and transparent and not trying to hide behind any illusions. Like, it's very refreshing to have that in front of your face. And then you walking away from it, I feel like light. I feel light about it, good. Because otherwise you feel a little bit weighed down if you made the other decision. So that's my advice. Just in those tiny moments, just exercise that muscle, do the right thing, even when it's not the easiest thing to do. And then when the bigger times come, it'll be easier. You'll be more practiced at just immediately deferring to what your integrity is telling you to do.
I love that advice. Exercise the muscle. That's the muscle of integrity. Yeah, that's great. Are there any other questions in the chat group, from the chat group? So I'm going to ask one more, okay? And that is simply what are some of the challenges? Wait a minute, this went way too fast. It went away. Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Um, there was one and I lost it real quickly. I'm so sorry. Gosh, I'm so sorry. It just totally went away. Okay. So maybe Corey, you could resend that to me. Do you mind? Um, the whole idea about using volunteering as a way to build your resume, I understand all that. But I, could you go talk a little bit more about using volunteering to grow leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I bring it up is because the only reason I have been placed in leadership positions is from volunteering, from starting as a volunteer. And so I've just found it to be a really effective way, even though that wasn't even my intention to grow it into a leadership position, but that's been just an effective way to become a leader and an expert in an industry. And so I think, and it helps the people to find their passion too, without a whole lot of commitment. You don't have to go get a 4-year degree or commit to a career in order to volunteer. So I think it's just a win on all sides. And when you raise your hand for something and you start at the ground floor, then you understand all of the complexities. Let's say with human trafficking, I started by writing articles. So I'm learning about the cause and I'm promoting it. And so then people were asking me about it and I would respond to them. And now I'm having conversations in public about it. And that led to me giving awareness presentations for groups of people. And so I'm just rehearsing, and so I'm like really getting ingrained in this industry, this anti-trafficking industry where I am in the Tampa Bay area. And I start meeting all kinds of people that are also in that industry. And they talk about projects that they've got going on. And it's just like one thing leads to another. And just by saying, yes, I'll help, it has really just created a whole career for me that I wasn't necessarily trying to create. And so I've found that to be true with the veteran stuff and with, I've seen friends that do that with animal volunteering and then they end up being a total leader. I've got a friend who opened up a rescue, but she started by walking dogs at the shelter, so I've just found it to be a way for you to really understand a topic or a cause and meet people and get experiences to lead others. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. How do you balance confidence and humility as a leader?
That's a good question. So I feel like I try to be cognizant of that because I believe that everybody should be confident. I think that you should have confidence and you should radiate confidence. But I saw a quote that and you guys have probably seen it on social media because that's where I saw it, where it says something to the effect of confidence isn't walking into a room and thinking that you're better than anyone. Confidence is walking into a room and not comparing yourself to anybody at all. And so,
wow.
yeah, I try to live that way. I try to live that way. And so I'm confident in my abilities because I work hard at what I do. And so I think when you work hard and you put the effort in and you know what your stuff, it's easy to be confident in that. But the humility part comes in, like with the Friendly Fridays, making sure that I reach out to people that I've worked with who have helped me and acknowledging them and saying, thank you. I couldn't have done this without you, because that reminds me, Stephanie, you can't do this on your own. Don't go getting all big headed about this. You work in a team. It reminds me of that. And it, from what they tell me, it makes them feel good and valued as part of the team. So I think just making an effort to do very specific things that acknowledges whoever you're around for the contributions that they're bringing helps you to remember that you are not the key player. Because I'll be honest, it's sometimes you start feeling like that, like I'm doing all this work and, I'm the one who made this movement and, you don't want to go down that path. So it's important. That's why I take steps to acknowledge the people that have helped and the people that have surrounded me. And I think that balances it out.
That's really helpful. Really helpful. All right. So now the questions are coming in. Here's another one. So you talked a lot about seeing challenges as opportunities. Maybe it's a little bit like being proactive instead of reactive, but seeing challenges as opportunities. How can you practice living that every day and keeping that positive perspective?
It's a decision. It's a decision you have to make in the face of the challenge. And it's not always easy until you get really good at it. And then even then, sometimes it's not easy. I can think of another example where I was, shortly after that time in my life where I was evicted, I got into real estate and I was working on a project to flip a house. I didn't have any money, but I partnered up with somebody who he brought the money and I was like, I'll do the work, the whole thing. And he ended up spending all of the profit. So I was supposed to make $25,000, which I really needed for like the whole year, and I didn't get any of it. And I spent months and months on this project. And so,
wow,
that's a challenge, right? That's an opportunity for me to decide, of course I was angry and I was hurt and upset and all of those things, but there comes a point where you make a decision. Am I going to stay in that mental space?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that going to get me? Let's walk down that path. Where's that going to get me? Well, I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to be ticked off. I'm going to be untrusting, all of these other things. I'm still not going to have 25 grand. So it's not going to get me that. So I could walk down that path, or I could say, okay, well, I look for the lessons. And, sometimes it's really irritating to have to do this with yourself, but it's important. So if I look for the lessons, where does that take me? All right, well, now I know red flags to look for when people are being dishonest. Now I know to get everything in writing. Now I know, all of these other things, all these other lessons that I learned. And so it's just a decision. What path do you want to go down? Where do you want your mental space to be? And every time you encounter it, you have to make that decision. And sometimes it's easier than other times. But I can't hold on to anger and resentment and jealousy and all of that, because I'm trying to go to the top. Listen, I'm trying to be a change maker and I'm trying to create positive impact for other people. And there's no way that I can do that if I'm over here like stewing in this negativity. So either that's who I am or that's who I'm not. And so it's just a decision. I don't have any
decision to make. Wow. Yeah. So as a woman, do you think there are more challenges or opportunities? I better use that phrase that might be different as a woman in leadership.
Yes. I could think of, yes. So I think that there are more challenges. So there's more opportunities for growth, in my opinion, as a woman. I can think, I've just got all these examples going in my head of times where I was passed over for promotions, for raises. I was asked to do a lot more work and wasn't paid anymore for it. Well, my male counterparts were paid for it. So there's that. And then there's also, and I love men. I'm not a man basher in any way. So, but there are some realities of working in the professional environment. And what I found is men can sometimes get really intimidated by a strong, powerful woman. Mm-hmm. And that can manifest sometimes in unpleasant behavior from them. So I don't know if I'm really helping right now, other than just being completely honest with what I've experienced. It's not always the case. I've also worked with men who are just really progressive and really focused on equity, not equality, but equity. And I really appreciate that. And I work well alongside them, but there are some challenges along the way. And listen, like I said, I'm trying to go upward. So I'm not going to let some petty little nonsense with, an insecure man stop me from where I'm going. So I just continue to be professional. I never speak poorly about them. Sometimes you have to address it with them, and I think that's a good thing to do. But I just am professional. I work well with them, but I just keep my guard up and know, okay, well, you may not be able to trust this person with this type of initiative or things like that. So yeah, there can be some challenges.
Got it. Yeah. Because we have a lot more in common with men as a woman than we're different. But there are some differences too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I have one last question. And how did you build your confidence in those rock bottom situations? What, I think what this person is maybe saying that they understand when things are going wrong. And
Yeah.
how do you keep going up?
It doesn't keep going up. It goes like this. You just gotta hold on, I'll be very honest, in those rock bottom places, my confidence was rock bottom. I was not feeling good about myself. I felt like a complete failure as a mother, as a woman, as a prior military member. I'm like, what am I doing? How am I getting evicted from this house? And like having to ask people for help. I was rock bottom confidence. And I think it's just giving yourself grace and just being okay with the fact that like crap happens. It doesn't mean I'm a failure, even if I feel like that. And sometimes that doesn't mean that that's the identity I have to take on. I see it. I felt failure. I acknowledge it. And I'm going to try to pick up the pieces and put myself back together and move forward. But it's not just this confidence hike up the mountain. This is like up and down. And I got to say, even more recently when I had walked away from a position because of integrity, and it was in agreement with everything. And I thought I walked away from that with all the confidence in the world, like I'm going to get hired somewhere so quickly. People are just going to be ready to hire me. And it did not happen. And it took a lot longer than I thought. And that's when my confidence was like crashed into the ground. And so those are times when you need that support system of those high achievers around you. That's really when it pays off to have people who've got your back and who lift you up when you're down, because they were like, listen, reminding me of all the things that they see in me, and that kind of helps bring you back up and poke your head out, and so it's not this straight line, but surround yourself with good people and be a good person to others. And then when you hit your lows, they'll help lift you up, and you'll be able to do the same for them. And it's just this beautiful, myriad of help.
Such great advice. Thank you. And I guess what you really did was you helped us understand that we're not protected from what we're perfected through. And what a fabulous phrase. And Stephanie, I'm just so impressed and so appreciative. Thank you all for who attended. Thank you for the students and faculty that had a chance to be with us this evening. And we look forward to our next leadership talk, and that will be March 3rd. Again, Stephanie, you were just fabulous.
Thank you.
Very appreciative.
I'm so happy to be here. So honored. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night to all. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.